one of last night's games was worth waiting for.
This is the worst.
Mota Zitabanakasi, welcome into the worst fantasy show. I am your host with the least, Jack Lucenay. We waited an extra day to drop the studs and duds and the waivers with the Monday night doubleheader. The NFL insisting on shoving their capitalism down our throat, making us purchase every streaming service under the sun. But for real, because there were two very important games in terms of the fantasy assets that were involved, I decided to wait until today to drop the show. Obviously, studs and duds and waivers turned out to be the right decision, especially with the Ravens Buccaneers game dropping nearly 80 points on the board. So yes, we will get into the hearts and farts, starting of course with the positive. Let's get into the hearts. So like I mentioned off the top, Lamar Jackson and Baker Mayfield, they both had monster fantasy days. Lamar Jackson more so with 5 passing touchdowns and, of course, a bunch of rushing yards. Baker Mayfield making it up in garbage time, also had 303 in spite of the interceptions that he threw before. Russell Wilson, otherwise, was your number one fantasy scoring quarterback on the week. I think Kyler Murray was right in there, too, because of that one rushing touchdown along the sideline. You had Josh Allen, Drake May, Marcus Mariota in lieu of the injured Jaden Daniels. That really sucked. And injuries have been bad all year, but it just feels like every week the fantasy gods are like, hold my beer. And they're just making the injuries even worse week to week. Like we saw not one, but 2 high-scoring, high-value fantasy teams lose all of their wide receivers. Like it's horseshit. But yeah, Marcus Mariota, Jalen Hurts winning me some big money this weekend. Stacked Jalen Hurts, Saquon, and A.J. Brown, among others, and I ended up taking down the one of the tournaments there, the Little Splash over on Drafters. Shout out to my guy Disco, big draft energy. If you guys don't watch his show, highly recommend it. He was the one that turned me on to Drafters. If you guys ever go sign up, if it's your first time, you want to do the price match deal, make sure you use the code DISCO. It'll really help my boy out. So anytime you guys sign up to Drafters or Owner's Box, if you've never heard of that, that's where you can play like some salary style DFS stuff. Also use his code. But otherwise, for quarterbacks, rounding out guys that were serviceable in a week where it was actually pretty brutal, Brock Purdy, Jordan Love, Geno Smith, Trevor Lawrence had a whole 19 fantasy points. Aaron Rodgers had a bad game, but he still had 18 fantasy points. And then Sam Darnold and Jared Goff. Again, this was a pretty bad week for fantasy scoring until Monday night happened with the Bucs-Ravens game. Russell Wilson was legitimately the highest scoring fantasy quarterback with 2 passing touchdowns, like 250 yards, and a rushing touchdown. For the running back, King Henry, Derrick Henry continues to be one of the best running backs in the NFL. Saquon Barkley with the monster revenge game against the Giants. That was nice to see. We also had on Monday night, flipping it back, the resurgence of Rachaad White, who was left for dead in these fantasy streets, but I actually took him in a lot of DFS last night. Helped me break even. So that was good. James Conner was relevant. Didn't get the touchdown, but had a lot of yards. Bucky Irving continues to be relevant. He's the guy that, whether it's Rachaad White on one side or Sean Tucker on the other, he is going to continue to have relevance in the offense. So he's an important stash and player that you can still flex. Justice Hill showed up with a receiving touchdown. Jahmyr Gibbs had a monster day. So between Saquon, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Breece Hall, that was how I took down the little splash. I also had T. Higgins, A.J. Brown, and I had David Njoku at tight end, which was a massive help. So yeah, that was a lot of fun this weekend. Also, Joe Mixon just continues to dominate. He's someone I'm targeting heavily in my DFS this week coming up with a matchup against the Colts looming. Tank Bigsby. Man, Travis Etienne is going to be the next running back that everyone's going to assume is dead, and he's just injured, guys. This is Rashad, like the exact situation that we just saw with Rashad White. As much as we all, the fantasy community want to jump on to the next guy and be like, oh, it's Sean Tucker time now. That's rarely how it ever works. Like usually it is just an injury to the primary running back, and then when that guy's healthy again, the team will lean on them again when they come back for the most part. So I expect Travis Etienne to get his job back when he does come back, but in the meantime, Tank Bigsby is still going to be very playable. Javonte Williams, again, you talk about guys left for dead that had a resurgence week this week. Javonte was one of them. And he has a smash matchup coming against the Carolina Panthers. Breece Hall, aforementioned, Bijan Robinson. So finally, Breece and Bijan, considered, argued, potentially the 1 and 2 running back drafted. And they weren't doing much, but now they've come to life the last couple weeks. Kenneth Walker, Kareem Hunt, Kyron Williams. There's been no running back in the NFL more consistent than Kyron Williams. He has at least a touchdown in every single game this year. The idea that Kyron Williams was just going to fall off and lose his job and become irrelevant and become washed, and turns out he's actually a good running back. Aaron Jones, Najee Harris, Josh Jacobs, Alexander Mattison, hilariously enough, Brian Robinson, and Chuba Hubbard round out this list of guys that were serviceable. We'll get into a wide receiver. Before we get in the wide receiver, we got a comment and a trade question. Parker Bledsoe, shout out to you. Thanks for stopping by. Should I accept Debo and Pollard for Flowers and JT? No. I don't know what's going on with Debo. Debo might be hurt now and potentially could get traded, and then you don't know where he's going to land. You would think in a better spot, but maybe not, or maybe they just keep him now because of the Ayuk injury, but he's been very kind of hit or miss. I like Pollard a lot, but Jonathan Taylor's supposed to be coming back this week, and they really need him. Do the Colts, especially if they're going to keep leaning on Anthony Richardson. They desperately need a running game and Jonathan Taylor to come back, and I think he could be good down the stretch. And Zay Flowers, even though he's coming off a bad game now with the Bucs, I think has proven himself this year more than I believed in him. So I think I marginally still prefer Flowers and JT, though the only thing that gives me cause for pause is Pollard there. I really like Tony Pollard. Wide receivers for the Hearts. We got Chris Godwin and Mike Evans. Rest in peace to both of them. Evans lost probably for a month. Godwin for the season. But otherwise, the high performers, Amon-Ra St. Brown, George Pickens, Brian Thomas Jr., who I saw a guy on Twitter. This is why I struggle with the dynasty community sometimes. He was like, trade Brian Thomas Jr. for whatever you can get for him. He's overrated. I was like, bro, you don't trade. This is why it's like, come on. You're supposed to be a dynasty guy. You don't trade a rookie when he's blowing up the way that everyone wanted Marvin Harrison Jr. to blow up. Just ridiculous. So just ignore that. Ride the BTJ wave all the way to the playoffs. A.J. Brown, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf, Keon Coleman, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, Drake London, McCole Hardman. McCole fucking Hardman. That's a heartbreaker. That's just telling you how down bad the Chiefs wide receiver room is right now. Cedric Wilson. Amari Cooper caught a touchdown in his first game. Cedric Tillman, Romeo Dobbs, and Terry McLaurin. McLaurin getting it done even without Jaden Daniels. That's impressive. For tight ends, Cade Otton and Mark Andrews both smashed. Cade Otton will be a popular waiver ad. He is definitely a fab dump if you need a tight end. He saw all the targets, and he was getting knocked around. I'm surprised, honestly, he made some of the catches he did. He looks really impressive. And then Mark Andrews again. This is the week of the left for dead candidates coming back and scoring touchdowns. Mark Andrews, double touchdown, now has 3 in his last 2 weeks. Will Dissly was the most relevant tight end in the Chargers-Cardinals game, which sucks. Trey McBride was still okay, but he was much lower on this list. And then you just had, this is where it's like the tight end this year. Jonnu Smith popping up here as a top 5 tight end. Just disgusting. But otherwise, David Njoku had a monster week. Brock Bowers continues to impress. Hunter Henry, who I had as a spot start and a waiver ad last week. He was impressive. You had George Kittle, Zach Ertz, Tucker Kraft, Kyle Pitts, Jatavian Sanders, Tyler Conklin, Noah Gray, and Noah Fant. Noah Gray and Noah Fant, the Noahs, going 4 for 66 and 4 for 65. That's all you need to be a top 10 tight end these days. And then on defense, the Denver Broncos were the best defensive matchup that you could have played all week. You got to sit on it all week too. The Eagles, one of my favorite streaming candidates, they sacked the Danny Dimes 7 times, and then they even got Drew Lock once, so they had 8 total. But yeah, dominated. The Commanders. I thought Commanders actually could be a little bit of a trap game in terms of a defensive streamer where maybe, you get some garbage time from Deontay Johnson and Chuba Hubbard and whatever. No, they just absolutely dominated. Luckily, though, the team I said that you should stream ahead of the Manders was the Rams, and they were right next on the list. They dominated the Raiders. The Chiefs get to play the Raiders next, and may be available on some waiver wires. I know they were in one of my leagues, and I got a waiver bid in on them as we speak. And the Seattle Seahawks and the Cincinnati Bengals rounded out. But yeah, let's get into what we're all really here for. It's fun to be positive and everything, but at my core, I'm a pessimistic motherfucker. Let's get into the farts.
Come on, don't bullshit me. Bullshit. 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 You said so. It's all bullshit.
So we had one good Monday night game. The other one, not so much. Kyler Murray, even though I kind of mentioned him in the hearts because he had that one long rushing touchdown, it's just been kind of disappointing. Like, he was serviceable. He technically doesn't belong in this list. But I feel like the fact that he can't support Marvin Harrison Jr. either, and I have a theory about that. I think it really comes down to more of an intangible of, it's the trope. And I know it's a trope, but it's a trope for a reason, is because I think there's a lot of truth to it. The idea of quarterbacks and wide receivers building a chemistry connection. The whole reason of why Devontae Adams is so good with Aaron Rodgers, that unspoken way of communicating, knowing where they're going to be before they're going to do it kind of thing. All of those things that you build through reps and relationships. So it isn't just like practice on the field. It is, I think, also having very much to do with relationship. I'm not saying that every quarterback and wide receiver need to be best friends off the field. I think it certainly helps if the whole idea is that you're trying to build chemistry with someone. I want you to think about this for a second. Even if you are a professional making millions of dollars, on a human level, do you think that you would build more chemistry with someone that you liked versus someone that you didn't? Like, I don't care about all the money in the world. And especially, I think it gets lost almost of like that much money is fuck you money, right? Like millions of dollars is fuck you money. A lot of the time, you don't have to deal with pissant personalities in your day-to-day life. And then if that's this, and again, I'm not accusing Kyler Murray of being this way, or even Marvin Harrison Jr. of being this way, of being a diva, but I do think they're both younger players. I think you could also speak to the culture of how younger men relate and communicate to each other nowadays as compared to a previous generation, even my generation, when you're talking about millennials and how we relate to each other and the way we communicate each other and the way that Gen Z communicates and Gen Alpha and so on and so forth. So I think that's also coming into play, but these are all small intangible factors that I think do have an overall effect on the chemistry of Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. And so expecting Marvin Harrison Jr. to just come in, make this massive leap from college, become a NFL superstar right from the go, and we're spoiled because you're literally seeing it happen with Brian Thomas Jr., who, and I think especially in fantasy circles, was drafted much later. Like, I drafted the shit out of Brian Thomas Jr. I don't have a lot of MHJ, and that's because I saw the risk of if MHJ as a rookie doesn't hit in the first round, oh God, that potentially kills my team. But Brian Thomas Jr., if as a rookie he doesn't hit and I'm drafting him in the 9th round, who gives a shit? I'll drop him and pick somebody else up. Like, it is what it is. So I'm kind of getting away from it, but I do hold Kyler Murray responsible because you're the quarterback. And at the end of the day, the quarterback is the leader of the team, especially the offense. You are the central figure. You touch the ball on every play. Marvin Harrison Jr. can't throw the ball to himself, as impressive as that would be. So I'm lamenting Kyler Murray a bit here, but I do think he's largely responsible for the Cardinals' issues on offense. But Justin Herbert, he's just got, I'm as much as I love Lad McConkey and I was hoping he'd be more of a thing, they're just banged up. Lad himself is dealing with a hip injury, didn't have a catch until like the second half. And then they just have nobody else. Like, Josh Palmer is just not a dude. Like, Quentin Johnston and DJ, like, again, it's just they have a bunch of jabronis, basically. They have a bunch of jags. And I say that very much in NFL terms of as compared to other NFL wide receivers, not compared to normal human beings. Justin Herbert. Patrick Mahomes continues to be extremely disappointing. If you want exactly 15 points from your fantasy quarterback, Patrick Mahomes is your guy this year. And then Joe Burrow, They were serviceable. Again, they both had about 15 points, but the fact that both of them had less fantasy points than both fucking Knicks, like, are you shitting me? Under 10. These are the guys that actually killed your week. Anthony Richardson. I have so few shares of Anthony Richardson, and the few shares I do have are mostly in Dynasty. I traded for him in a redraft superflex only because I was also getting Kyron Williams in that deal, and that was my actual target. And even still, I regret trading for him. Anthony Richardson cannot throw the football. This man cannot hit the broadside of a barn. He should be on the bench. I know there's fantasy analysts, there's NFL analysts, there's a lot of experts out there that disagree, and they say, oh, the Colts are doing the right thing, and they should just let him play it out. No, that is, to me, that's complete bullshit. And I think it's so disingenuous that you look at a character like Jordan Love, who had 3 years to sit behind, veteran quarterbacks, and how much better I think that made them, the fact that they were able to pick up, again, all of the nuances and little intangibles and responsibilities of how to play the quarterback position. And again, like, at his first, he's basically one read and I'm going to try and run the ball and run over everybody. And that is never going to work in the NFL. He's just going to end up getting hurt again if he keeps playing this way. There's there is nothing I think that is going to benefit him from just playing it out and getting his ass kicked every Sunday. I genuinely believe that this entire team would benefit, and him most of all would benefit from Joe Flacco stepping in for the rest of the season as the starter. This, to me, I look at it as, look, Joe Flacco might not be at the level of an Aaron Rodgers in terms of his career, but he is at the level of Aaron Rodgers in terms of where they're at in their career. They're both, decade plus veterans that know basically everything about the game of football in the NFL. And I think, and honestly, last year they didn't have the option to redshirt Anthony Richardson because he was competing with Gardner Minshew, and you needed him to be able to beat Minshew to prove that you made the right draft pick. But this season with Flacco, me personally as a coach, I would have just said, you know what? Anthony Richardson is a physical specimen, and last year was an outlier, and he was competing with Gardner Minshew, and he did an excellent job, and unfortunately got injured. And I think actually I'm going to change course here, and since I have a veteran quarterback, I'm going to redshirt this kid for a year. Even though he played a little bit last year, I think instead what we're going to do is redshirt, rehab, and not just physically rehab him, but rehab his game. Again, I don't see the value in letting your quarterback go out there and get his ass kicked. And then it's like, okay, great. You're basically now setting up a situation where Anthony Richardson may one day get fixed by another team. Like, you are creating the situation of he will be the next Sam Darnold, Geno Smith, Baker Mayfield. Like, you're setting it up. So I'm out on the Colts at this point. Like, if Jonathan Taylor comes back, obviously you play Jonathan Taylor, but like, if Anthony Richardson's in, all the wide receivers are dead. All the receiving assets are dead. I don't want to fuck with the running backs, even though, like, again, unless it's Jonathan Taylor just getting a full workload, but like trying to decide between Tyler Goodson and Trey Sermon, I'm over it. Like, I'm just out on this whole team. Kirk Cousins had a bad week. Moving on to the rest of the quarterback duds, because we spent a long time on Kyler and A-Rich. Jaden Daniels injury. The fucking fantasy gods can't let us have anything nice this year. We're about to get Caleb Williams versus Jaden Daniels, and no, Jaden Daniels rib injury. He's probably doubtful, very unlikely to play. Most likely getting Marcus Mariota against a tough Chicago defense. Fuck. Matt Stafford, Matt Stafford is, hamstrung by the fact that, again, he also doesn't have any viable wide receivers outside of like Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson. AOC, Aiden O'Connell, got injured. If you tried to play him in Superflex, Deshaun Watson. The Deshaun Watson injury. I'm laughing because I'm not laughing at Deshaun Watson. Look, even though he did horrible things and by all accounts is kind of a shitty person, like, you still don't wish injuries on football players in general, right? So I think there is a separation of, and I've had the time and the luxury now too to sit back and kind of hear what others have had to say. And I've definitely heard, the players coming out against the crowd cheering for Watson's injury. But I don't think, again, this is one of those situations where it's being purposefully short-sighted to only look at, oh, well, he got injured and they cheered. It's like, look, first of all, again, Deshaun Watson isn't nicknamed Voldemort for shits and giggles, all right? Yeah, he's got the whole essay allegations, paid all of that off, moved on from Houston. He's been fucking terrible as a quarterback. Like, just if you want to just talk about the actual aspects of the NFL football game, he's been one of the worst quarterbacks in the NFL for like the last 2 years. when he hasn't been hurt. And I think he's paid so much money too that he just gives you no shot to win because you really can't add to the team around him the way that you normally would, the way you would need to support him. So it's just, there's so many bad things about this contract that have been brewing for years now. Like I look at, shout out to my my friend Yvette over at Bougie Sports, huge Browns fan. And I look at what she's had to deal with this year, and it's just been brutal even before the injury. And I do think that for Browns fans, the injury comes almost as a sigh of relief. And so I can understand in that moment, maybe you didn't act right and you didn't think of, taking the higher road for Deshaun Watson in that moment. And I can understand that. I may not agree with it, but I understand it. So I don't think I would have cheered the guy. Would I have been secretly, internally, and happy in the sense of like, okay, well, now we can move on to Jameis Winston? Sure. The fact that they were not ready to even do that, the fact that Dorian Thompson-Robinson came in as the backup quarterback tells me everything I need to know about the Cleveland Browns organization, and that I think they deserve all of the fucking shit that they get. Because that is such a fucking asinine decision to have a guy who is very clearly apologies to Dorian Thompson-Robinson and his family, but you are not an NFL quarterback, my guy. You are very much third string, belong in the XFL. I'm sure you were great in college or whatever. Jameis Winston could throw fucking a million interceptions, and he's still a better quarterback than you are. And again, I don't say that in a mean way. I look at it as an egregious lack of I don't even know the word for it. Like when you just don't do your job properly. That's what it is. Like what's the word for that? An egregious lack of execution, error in judgment. Anyways, let's wrap up the quarterbacks and move on here. CJ Stroud also had a bad game. Green Bay defense is pretty good, especially when they're at home. And Daniel Jones got sacked 7 times. Running backs. Okay. I'm like looking at this list and I'm like, oh shit, I put some wide receivers in here by mistake. But no, J.K. Dobbins. Shorter list here. Jordan Mason, Tony Pollard, Jalen Warren, Chase Brown, David Montgomery got hurt. That sucked. Alvin Kamara got that Broncos defense. Zach Moss, both Tyrone, Tracy Henn, Devin Singletary just ran into a tough Philadelphia defense. Austin Eckler, Ramondre Stevenson, Zamir White continues to be completely irrelevant. Raheem Mostert played, but didn't do much. And Sean Tucker, if you tried to follow the hot hand with Sean Tucker, nope, it went back to Rachaad White. Really, the running backs smashed this week, so that's why there really weren't a lot of names. I might be forgetting a few, but I'm just riding high on my Derrick Henry, Saquon Barkley shares that carried me through the week. At wide receiver, Jordan Addison, Alan Lazard, Michael Pittman, Darnell Mooney, Tyler Lockett, Malik Neighbors. That one hurt. Malik Neighbors. I had him in some DFS lineups and some dynasty lineups. Tennessee Titans wide receivers. I tried to go back to the well with Mason Rudolph. I'm done. I'm over it. This is another team I'm moving on. I'm shipping out. Calvin Ridley and DeAndre Hopkins on the teams I have them. I'm dropping them. I don't even care if they do good anymore. Wan'Dale Robinson, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams. Adams, it felt like they were going to get the touchdown in that first game. It wasn't great, but it will be there. I would stick with Devontae, obviously, for the rest of the season. I think it'll get better. Xavier Worthy, another guy that I think eventually has to start coming on strong in the back end of the season. Hopefully they start using him more. I think the lack of usage has been more concerning than anything. JSN, Brandon Ayuk, now out for the year, torn ACL and MCL from what I heard. So again, another wide receiver decimated by injury. And also Debo struggling with injuries is on this list. Christian Kirk, Xavier Legette, Pop. This, again, this reminded me. I just got so upset. Pop Douglas and Debo, they were sick all week, and I didn't see that shit reported anywhere. Did y'all? I'm so sick of the NFL with this injury bullshit. The way that they lie, the way that they just like fake these like injury designations, and the way that like dudes are questionable all week. Like, I'm so over this crap. So, this is my plea again to the fantasy community, and something I'm going to be doing personally in all of my leagues next year is 5 IR spots minimum, and they can be anything. I don't care what the injury designation is. Questionable, doubtful, NA, out, IR, whatever the fuck. They can all go in IR because I'm sick of this crap. Cooper Kupp was questionable all week. The team knew damn well they weren't going to play him. And if you're on a platform like Yahoo, you have to drop someone to take him out of your IR to be able to just make roster moves and shit. Like, it's so infuriating. I am so done with this. The way that the NFL manages injuries. Like, it's just, again, this isn't even strategy at a certain point. It's like, oh, the player's injured and do I drop? No, this is just like, again, the NFL fucking around, so I'm over it. The rest of this list: Jerry Jeudy, Jaden Reed, Deontay Johnson, Tyreek, and Jalen Waddle, who should finally be getting a quarterback back, thank God. Josh Downs, Christian Watson continues to just be so erratic. Tank Dell, Devonta Smith, big old goose egg, and Jameson Williams. Not only did he have a terrible week, now he's going to miss a couple weeks because he got popped for PEI. And it was funny because he's like, I don't agree with it, but I accept it. For tight ends, the Muth, Pat Freiermuth. He had one big catch. Still didn't matter. Still ended up on the fart list. I'm telling you guys, Arthur Smith hates tight ends. And that, what I mean by that is he actually loves tight ends, and he uses all of them. Darnell Washington's out here getting catches. Cameron Hayward's brother, I can't even remember the kid's name. He's a fullback / tight end. He had a big week the other week. Like, trust me, Arthur Smith is funky with the tight ends, and it's just never going to be a thing. Evan Ingram, after a monster week, kind of disappeared. Dalton Kincaid just continues to be kind of irrelevant. And then Kelsey, Schultz, Laporta, Parkinson, Bengals tight end, Gesicki or all, doesn't matter. And then on defense, the Jets, the Dolphins, the Jags, and the Steelers all let you down. Ooh, we got another comment before we move on here to the waivers. Traded Josh, I'm going to assume that's Josh Jacobs for DJ Moore and mid-round pick in a 3-player keeper league. I have Kamara, Hunt, Hubbard, and Bigsby at running back now. Needed a wide receiver bad. I went through the league, and that's the best I could do. L? No. So, I mean, look, I'm a massive DJ Moore owner. I see that as a win potentially for both teams. Like, if I could have traded DJ Moore in a mid-round pick for Josh Jacobs in a keeper or dynasty league, I would have done so, especially if I needed the RB help. But I think DJ Moore, look, obviously he's still capable of the spike weeks. We saw that 2 weeks ago. My only concern is Shane Waldron. Shane Waldron just seems like a really terrible offensive coordinator. Like, the fact that JSN kind of talked shit about him, and we just have seen like the Seahawks offense has been a lot better. Even though I will say JSN himself hasn't actually been all that much better this year than he was last year. So maybe something to be said for that. But at the end of the day, I think Caleb Williams is an ascending figure in terms of quarterback. And I mean that in like he's a rookie. He is going to get better by the end of the year. I think we've already kind of seen flashes of him improving during the year, which I think is, very encouraging for his future prospects. And DJ Moore is his number one wide receiver. I know Keenan Allen is there and Roman Dunes is there. And when all three are present plus Cole Kmet, there's definitely going to be weeks where DJ Moore kind of ends up on the outside looking in. We've seen that before with the San Francisco 49ers receiving options. Did you dump Deebo Samuel just because he didn't, blow up every single game? No. So I think DJ Moore will have more good games. If you really were that down bad at wide receiver, I don't think this is a complete L. I do think DJ Moore can be a decent player for the rest of the year. So, again, I slightly prefer the Jacobs side. I won't lie to you, but I don't think, huge L. No. Especially if Jacobs were to get hurt at any point, then all of a sudden, that turns into a dub. If DJ Moore gets hurt then or continues to underperform because Shane Waldron, then maybe it is an L. Who knows? It's fantasy. But, I mean, again, in a vacuum, when I'm like, you needed a wide receiver, is DJ Moore still a good asset in my eyes? Yeah, I think so. All right, let's get into the waiver wire.
The fuck? The fuck? The fuck is in the air. The fuck? There's white shit everywhere. The fuck? I must be fucking baked and this shit's probably fake. The fucking hell did I just take? The fuck?
My number one target at quarterback, whether it's in single quarterback, super flex, redraft, dynasty, it don't matter. Jameis Winston is going to be my number one ad across the board at quarterback. Again, we've been here before. It's the old 30 for 30 Jameis Winston. He has a couple of weapons. Nick Chubb just came back. Jerry Jeudy, viable. Cedric Tillman, he's there. They've got a couple bodies at wide receiver. David Njoku, a legitimate top 10 tight end. I think Jameis can come in and do some things, whip the ball around. Again, in all my super flex leagues where I need a quarterback, and all my even single quarterback redraft leagues that are 14, 16 team where you got a couple other teams holding on to backup quarterbacks and shit like that. I'm picking up Jameis over the likes of Andy Dalton, for example, if you've been riding that. Or if you had Joe Flacco and lost in because Anthony Richardson came back. That's another example. For more of a spot start fill-in, I think Marcus Mariota. He was better than I expected, and the Commanders have just been better than I expected. They lean generally on the run game, so I think he can do some stuff, even in a tough matchup against the Bears. Which, again, this sucks that it's not Jaden Daniels versus Caleb Williams, but whatever. In terms of drop candidates, Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. So Russ was widely dropped in a lot of leagues, may have been picked up in a few for a streamer. He looked okay. So if you need a quarterback and Russ is available, you can pick him up. But I would be watching for all the Justin Fields owners now to drop Justin Fields now that Russell Wilson had a game and looked good. I would expect to see Fields hit waivers in a lot of leagues. So in super flex leagues, especially where I have an extra bench spot, I'll stash him because Russell Wilson could easily get hurt again or, play a couple bad games and we're right back in the Justin Fields zone. And if you're the one that has Fields and Russ is available, I would pick him up. If you're the one that has Russ and you see Fields get dropped, I would pick him up. This is one of the rare situations where I think you can handcuff the quarterback because both are basically equally viable when they start. And then, again, speaking of a drop candidate, Gardner Minshew may have been dropped in a couple leagues, so keep an eye on that. AOC is going to be out for a month. They did sign Desmond Ridder, hilariously enough. And shout out to Dan Hansis of Heed the Call over on Underdog. He keeps talking about how he is pretty sure that Antonio Pierce just really dislikes Gardner Minshew as a person, and that's why he doesn't want to start him at quarterback. And I kind of buy into that narrative, to be perfectly honest. But yeah, Minshew, if he does get the start, They're kind of down bad. The Raiders are. I don't think I would, but if you just have no other options. For running back, it's hurting at running back. It's officially handcuff season. Like, these are all basically handcuffs. Ray Davis, Justice Hill, Ty Chandler, Blake Corum, and Trey Benson, if you saw them dropped. Like, basically handcuff your guys at this point of the year. Emmanuel Wilson, throw that name out. There really was not a lot in terms of like guys you're going to be able to spot start this week. It's going to be really gross. So that's something I would, maybe keep an eye on. If you need running back help this week, you might want to go explore some trade options because it's going to be thin on waivers. Like, honestly, Ray Davis might be the best flex spot out of all the names that I saw available. For wide receiver, Rashad Bateman. God damn, Rashad Bateman. He had a monster day against the Bucs, but he's actually been like quietly consistent and efficient even before that, which is why I grabbed him in a couple DFS lineups. So he's someone that is widely available. Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard and even Trey Palmer are going to be the hot ads for the Buccaneers decimated wide receiver crew. McMillan, the rookie, potentially replaces Chris Godwin in the slot because that's what he did in college. So I would prioritize him over the other guys. But Sterling Shepard was getting a bit of run even before the injuries. So I wouldn't mind sneaking him in a couple places as well. Cedric Tillman, Ricky Pearsall, and Jacob Cowing for the San Francisco 49ers. Cedric Tillman from the Cleveland Browns. Again, hoping that Winston takes over for the rest of the year. Tillman might be viable. And then with the injury to Brandon Ayuk and even Deebo Samuel dealing with his own sickness, illness, injury, whatever was going on, Ricky Pearsall and Jacob Cowing both worth ads. The Rams continue to lean on Tutu Atwell as kind of an outlier, like base level wide receiver. So he's someone worth spot starting if you just need wide receiver fill-ins. I don't mind Tyler Johnson either. Jordan seems like the Jordan Puka Cuppington experiment is already kind of over. He's dealing with injuries too. Just everyone, every wide receiver in the NFL dealing with injuries. Bub Means, Mason Tipton, and Cedric Wilson in that order for the wide receivers for the New Orleans Saints. Also maybe worth deep ads stashes. For tight end, Cade Otton. You ought to know he's going to be the number one waiver ad to me, I think, out of all of the names I just said, besides Jameis Winston, if I'm really hurting at quarterback and a super flex. I'm prioritizing Cade Otton over every single one of these names. He had 8 for, I think, 100-ish yards, like 11 targets. He was already getting like pretty consistent numbers all year when he was having to play with Godwin and Mike Evans. Now you take those guys out of the equation, I think he actually becomes the number one target for Baker Mayfield. Jatavian Sanders, it's now 2 games in a row, the rookie tight end for the Panthers, has shown up with some target share. And Will Dissly, 11 gross targets from Justin Herbert for the Chargers. He is worth deep stash, especially in like a Scott Fishbowl type league with the tight end premium. He might be worth even a spot in your flex. And then for defense to wrap it up, the Denver Broncos. If you have them, hold on to them. They will be playing at home against the Carolina Panthers. The Miami Dolphins get Tua Tagovailoa back, and a matchup against the Arizona Cardinals, who on paper are a great offense, but haven't been playing like it. And I think my number one defensive ad of the week, if Kansas City is floating out there, the Chiefs will get the Raiders. Even if it's on the road in the Raiders building, I would play the Chiefs defense here. They'll be my number one defensive ad of the week. Man, thank you guys so much for joining in. For you hockey fans out there, come join me. I'm going to be hanging out with JT of Fantasy in Frames, talking some puck to 9:30 Eastern Standard Time. Go look on my Twitter. You'll see me repost the link for that later tonight. But otherwise, we will be back Thursday with the matchups for the week. Until the next time, though, I will catch all of you guys on the flip side.
He's running down the middle by the 50. He's at the 30. He's bare-chested and banging his chest. Now he runs the opposite way. He runs at the 50. He runs at the 40. The guy is drunk, but there he goes. The 20. They're chasing him. They're not going to get him. Waving his arms, bare-chested. Somebody stop that man. Here comes